Hi everybody, today I'm going to make a tutorial about the basics of observer-based flying machines. And in order to start with the observers, I want to talk about flying machines in general first. So what is a flying machine, what do you need, and what can it do? So let's start first with engines. So this is the very basic caterpillar engine. So basically an engine is something that creates a loop and pushes a whole structure one forward. And it has no external wiring. So if you would update this piston here, it would grab the normal piston, so this one is a sticky one, and grabs it, basically places the piston in that position, then this piston is also powered by quasi-conductivity and pushes that part forwards. And since the piston is still extended, this piston can't extend when it's getting pushed back, and that's why it stays in this quasi-powered state. So this is the very basic engine. You could also make it completely automatic by adding an extension in the back. So what's happening now, you don't need to give manual updates to this piston right here. Since this piston also gets moved forwards and is getting powered by quasi-conductivity, it can extend and powers the piston or updates the piston in the back. And this way, create a loop, and this is the basic caterpillar engine. So this is the basic caterpillar engine. There are also other engine types, but I think the caterpillar one is the one that's used in most cases. So an engine is basically something that creates a loop and pushes itself forward each cycle. And a flying machine usually consists out of either just an engine or an engine and additional extensions. So of course you could add some blocks to the side here. They would also get pushed. Of course just one block here, but could add additional slime blocks and blocks attached to it. For example, you could attach some TNT that explodes on impact, so you can make a TNT missile out of a flying machine. But you can only add a certain amount of blocks, since a piston can only push 12 blocks. So if you want to have a larger structure that moves itself, then you can add so-called extensions. So you would add a piston that faces in the same direction. It's also getting pushed forward into a powered state. So this piston gets pushed one forward, then it's getting powered by the redstone block and removes the power source itself. So the slime blocks are getting pushed forward and the redstone block with it. And then you can also add more extensions to the extension, or you could add extensions on the other side and make a chain. So basically you can add an infinite amount of extensions to a flying machine. So let's do one more. Of course you can also push a piston into quasi-powered state. It would also extend since it updates itself. And let's start this again. You can see also the extension is getting moved. But everything is still controlled by the engine. So if you stop the engine, also the extensions would stop. There are not only different engine types, there are also different extension types. So the first one I showed you was the pushing extension, but you can actually also make a pulling extension. So what happens here, a sticky piston is also getting pushed into a position where it's powered by the redstone block. But since we immediately remove the redstone block again with this pushing piston, this piston is just powered for a short moment. So basically in the same game tick, the power source is added and removed, and this piston here receives a theoretic pulse. And if a piston receives a theoretic pulse, it would extend immediately and retract again. And that's why the piston retracts fast enough, so it could be pushed again with the cycle here. And also those blocks are pulled along. So let's start this back up. As you can see here, those blocks are just getting pulled along. Then of course you could add either a pushing extension or pulling extension again, and so on. So this is a one-way flying machine, which means the engine and the extensions would only work in one direction, only can move that direction. But it's actually possible to make flying machines that can at least move in two directions, even for observers, or even four directions with observers now. And this is a basic two-directional engine. We have two caterpillar engines stacked together in the middle with this block object detector that gives some updates to the sticky pistons. Looks a little bit weird, but stopped, you can also stand it in the other direction. And the big disadvantage of two-directional flying machines, or the problem there is that you always have to move this dead weight So the blocks that are responsible for the movement in one direction need to be pushed back in the other direction. And that's why we don't have much space or room to work with. In fact, we could only attach one single block to this engine. If it would try to attach 2 blocks, then it wouldn't start again, since we already reached the block or the push limit. You can also make different observerless two-way flying machine engines and also extensions for them. So for example, here we have a quasi two-way flying machine. So which means it works in that direction, but in order to fly in the other direction, you just need to move those blocks. And this way you have a lot of more push limits to work with, since you can add more blocks. You only need to make a station at the end, or a destination, where those blocks are getting moved around. And this way we could even make a quasi four-way flying machine, but to my knowledge there are no extensions for it. So this was a little introduction about the most important concepts and terms. If you want to know more about the pre-1.11 flying machines, so observerless, definitely link a lot of channels and videos in the video description. And I can also recommend the flying machine tutorial by Cubehamster, which was mostly about one-way flying machines. And now about the observers and flying machines. And personally, I also really started using flying machines in 1.11, since the observer block is a total game changer, especially for two-way flying machines. But yeah, let's start with some one-way tech first. So you might remember this one, that you need to give an update to this sticky piston here. Previously we added an extension directly in the back, but what we could do to compact it a little bit is adding an observer here. So this would also update the sticky piston and causes it to launch. And this Caterpillar engine is even faster, so it's just 5 blocks, and it would move every 10 game ticks. The traditional one would move every 12 game ticks. So this one is now even faster and more compact. There's a disadvantage if you try to stop it. Sometimes it starts shaking. Let's try it again. So now it would start shaking, but if you add, for example, extra piston here, with 0 tick, the one at the top, and yeah, it would stop that. But it could have, it has also the advantage, if it starts shaking, you could just remove the block again, then it would move further. So there's also an option. So it could have a shaking engine, just requires removal of the block, and then it would start again. We can also make really nice one-way extensions with the observer now. So there's a pushing and a pulling extension. So the pushing extension is just a normal piston, and then an observer block that powers him. So it doesn't matter where you power it. You could also power the slime block next to it. You can place the observer at the bottom. There's really a lot of possibilities where you can attach it. You can also make extension like this. Move the observer between there. So you don't need a slime block attached, since we always move in one direction. You could also make it like this. So there's really a lot of possibilities how you can do this. But basically we have a normal piston, and then pushes some slime blocks. So the whole structure moves, the observer with it, and in a new position the observer would give an update since it's getting moved to the piston, which causes it to push that slime block structure. And now let's do the pulling extension. So it's a sticky piston in the opposite direction. And now again, you just have to power this piston somewhere, either of course a connectivity from the top or from the side. So same principle again. And the next block's directly here. Let's start this up. There's also a difference in the timings. So the normal extension adds 3 game ticks of delay, but the observer extensions, they add a little bit more of delay. The pushing extension of the observer adds 4 game ticks, and the pulling one adds 6 game ticks. So this could also be useful for some timings you need to do with your one-way flying machine. So one more note on the one-directional extensions, you can also use a sticky piston for the pushing extensions, but there's not really an advantage to it. So it would work the same. Oh, remove this one again. You can see it would also work for sticky piston. Okay, let's just disable it for a moment. Let's go to the main attraction. So it's incredibly simple to make a two-way flying machine engine now. All you need is 6 blocks. You need 2 sticky pistons, 2 slime blocks, and 2 observers. So let's build this up. There are, of course, different ways to build it up. just show you one of those. And what is last? And this is a two-way engine. So if I can update to this observer, it would go the other direction. And a lot of ways to build this. You can also power the pistons of quasi-connectivity. I could attach the observers at the bottom, I could have them facing down, so there's a lot of options how you can build those. They also move once every 10 game ticks, so they're quite fast. And yeah, they're basically a pulling and a pushing extension. So what you do here, let's rearrange it so it's easier to see. So what we do here, we power the sticky piston here, which pushes this line block with the other sticky piston and the observer on top. And then this is then the pulling extension, because this pulls those blocks again. So we push and pull and push and pull. Basically we combine a pulling and a pushing extension into an engine. Just some info on the side. Chaining extensions together is a nice way to make a one-way engine. So here we have 4 extensions which are chained together. It doesn't really matter which extensions you use. So we have 2 normal ones with the redstone blocks and 2 pulling extensions. And one of those normal extensions is in a powered state, which just needs an update to start the whole thing. As you can see, it's a little bit slower. So it's a nice way to make a slower engine. You could start this back up again if I remove a block. So it is really a nice way to make an engine. But back to a 2-directional engine. So the next step in automating this thing is adding an auto return station. So you don't need to give updates on both sides, just one side is enough, or even no sides at all, so you want to have it going in both directions all the time. So I'm going to show you 3 ways how to do that. There are probably more, or there are definitely more, just show you my 3 favorite ways. So we can remove that obsidian block here, and on the height of this observer, which in this case faces downwards, we place a block update detector. Looks like this. And it's important that this observer has to face downwards. Doesn't matter where the other one is. You can, also place it here. And as you can see, if that comes in, since it gives a block update, this piston extends, then it retracts again, and then this block that moves down updates the observer, and it causes the machine to return. Okay, I could do the same on the other side and it would just go back and forth. The second method is also quite nice, since it doesn't matter in this case where the observer is facing here, so you can also this time attach it at the bottom. Doesn't matter at all. Okay, let's start this flying machine. So what happens here, this observer detects the incoming piston, and then it powers the sticky piston here, and then we have another observer. So let's just see it in action. This is getting powered 4 times, but also sends the flying machine back. And here's also a third possibility. This is a 1-block return station, but this requires to add an additional observer at the flying machine. So here we have the normal upwards facing observer that powers the sticky piston here, but then we add an additional observer that faces downwards. And this powers this piston here, which extends, and activates this observer again. So let's see that in action. It will also return. Of course, this would also work if we have it facing upwards and the other one downwards. Piston, of course, also has to be here. So it's getting powered and then updates this one. And this is probably my favorite way of making return station. Because most of the time you need the slime block anyway for something, and then you just need to add one additional block, and the return station is quite simple. So now let's talk about extensions for the 2-way flying machine. So there's a little bit of a change of concept. With the old flying machines, it was better to add some types of extensions to the engine, since there was a lot of effort at the stations to move those blocks around and do similar stuff. And with this one here, didn't have much room to add extensions even, so it was just easier to attach a lot of stuff to a single 2-way flying machine. But now, since the 2-way engine has so many available blocks left to push, actually it makes sense to just build some engines and no extensions for it. So we can move a lot of blocks, so For example, I use this concept to have a lot of small engines for my ocean monument sand filling system. So we would drain the water around an ocean monument just by dropping a lot of sand on top of it. So we can transport a lot of sand. So there's a continuous line. And the only thing which is important is to activate both observers here at the same time, so these slime blocks wouldn't connect. But there's no problem at all to do that. So let's activate this. As you can see, move forwards, sand gets dropped, and both machines move back. So for most of my flying machines, I just used a lot of small units or simple engines without any extensions, since in my opinion this is the better concept in this case. But in some cases there's just no way around it. We need to add an extension, since we need to push a lot of blocks at once. For example, a TNT tubing device has at least 11 blocks, and then you couldn't attach 11 blocks to the engine. So that's why we need an extension. A very good spot to add an extension is this slime block here, since it's getting powered anyway, to power the stick piston that pulls. And let's see in action. There's just one tiny flaw with it. So you can see the extension is a two-way extension. I mentioned it earlier. We can use sticky piston for the pushing part, and it also pulls fine. But here you can see the issue. If the machine arrives back again, and we can't launch it again, since those blocks go beyond the push limit. So we need to power this piston again, and then we can launch again. So here's the return station. So we use this design with the normal piston. We can add a trapdoor here and another observer there. Now we actually need to power this one once more. Now we can launch this. Now once the flying machine comes in, we push that stuff away, and then we can launch it again. So we can also add an option to launch the whole machine again. It wouldn't work to add another upwards facing piston observer and a piston there, since this piston is extended and we can't push again. So that's why we need some more delay. So let's launch this meanwhile, and we can add a redstone lamp here and another observer there. And this would push those blocks away, and then moments later launch the whole thing again. You can also stop this again just by powering this redstone lamp. This would stop it, and so you can launch it again. In some cases it's also nice to have a moving return station. So this is a return station that advances by one block each cycle. Also the flying machine flies one block further each cycle. And how does this work? So this time we need the observer facing that direction, and it bumps against this observer. The observer gets moved and activates, which this observer detects, then launches the machine back in the other direction. So I just added a sand block here so you can see use. So this is quite useful for stuff like bridge builders or quarries. Okay, now it moves back. Add the sand block now. Since it moves one block further, drops it there, etc. With the same concepts, we can also build a vertical flying machine. There's just one little detail. We must not power the slime block above the upwards facing sticky piston with a server. This would start shaking. So there's another way to power this downwards facing sticky piston. Is using quasi-connectivity. Just place the observer there, and we can place the bottom observer either here or attached somewhere there. So as you can see, it launches, and you can also send it back down again. Also the rest works quite similar, so we can also make an auto return station by adding an additional observer here and placing a piston here. As you can see, this would automatically return. So one more practical use. Sometimes you need to move a lot of blocks around. In this case, you can just add some pistons to the slime block structure here and power it each move with an observer. So this way we can move a lot of blocks around, and also this can return fine. Let's stop it here. Send it back to the other direction. In some cases you just can't attach enough blocks to the flying machine. For example, I had this problem recently for Treefork. So I had a 5-high column of pistons that were supposed to push a lot of logs, 10 trees in total. But since we already have 5 pistons and we need 5 blocks for the slime blocks, then additional piston and an observer, so we are at 12, we couldn't add the observers that power those pistons. So basically 2 make an extension or make a second flying machine that moves those observers. And yeah, that's what we would do here. It's also important here that I power both those machines at the same time, so they would launch at the same time. Now one machine just moves the observers, which power those pistons, which would move the logs. Could also just send them back, just to find a way always to update the observers in a nice way. A lot of times you would have space restrictions and you need to find solutions on your own. One last interesting thing to end the video. We can also make a flying machine that flies slow in one direction but fast in the other. So we chained some pulling extensions together. Takes quite a while to arrive at the other side, and now we can add this update this piston here. See, it's a lot faster since all the pulling extensions are pushed at once. So now, yeah, the uses for those machines are quite limited, but sometimes it's exact the right thing you need. Okay, so that's the end of the basics tutorial about observer-based flying machines, and also made a little introduction to flying machines. I hope this was useful for you. Of course, working with flying machines is mostly trying to do stuff on your own, but yeah, for those basics, I guess it's a good start. So thanks a lot for watching. Have a nice day. Bye bye.